Hello and welcome to the How to Optimize Images Like a Boss tutorial. I'm going to go through a couple of videos with you all on how to optimize images easily and efficiently without really having to do a whole lot of work. I'll say this in the blog post, really going by the 2080 principle, which is that we're going to get 80% of the results with 20% of the effort, aka being as lazy as we possibly can and letting all of the other apps do the work for us. So in this first video, I'm just going to cover really basics that I almost think that I don't need to cover, but just want to anyway for anyone that's a beginner. I don't really want to leave anyone out here. Although everyone's used to basic techniques of exporting from Photoshop in this example, I'm going to run through them again just to make it very, very clear and obvious. So we're going to start with just a web page. This is just a coming soon page that we have for our website at the moment, and I'll go to the page here. So this is what it looks like in practice. You can see we've got a giant PNG image right here of someone holding an iPhone. Now the goal is to get this image as small as we can, obviously so that the page is under a megabyte or that it's just optimized in general, as I'll say in the blog post again. And images like this that are huge, some people just don't really know where to start, especially when it's a PNG. They don't really know how to get the size right down, and it can be a big problem when you have multiple of these images on the landing page and it takes up a whole lot of space. A single image like that could be it. So, to begin, we have our landing page here. I'm going to open up the smart object where we have this in, and I'll show it to you here. So the image size right now is pixels, there we go, 1286 by 1080. So that's just the size to give you an idea. Now, how do we get this down? First of all, I'll show you just a normal export so we can see how big this file is if we just do a normal export. So I'm going to do Command Shift S, do a normal save. So I'll save this in blog, and then we'll go image optimization, and then we'll save this as a PNG, and we'll name it image unoptimized, which is probably not even a word, but we'll go with the image unoptimized. Okay, save, okay, and then we'll wait for that image to save into this folder, image unoptimized, and we'll click get info, and you can see here this image is now 1.7 megabytes. You think, wow, that's a lot, 1.7 megabytes. If we're trying to get a whole entire landing page under 1 megabyte, that 1.7 plus the page, that's going to be double what we should be doing. So some people, again, very beginners, might just be doing this. They might just be literally exporting images by saving it, and they're going to get big uncompressed images like this, so 1.7 megabytes. So what's the first step? Just a basic step that we can do in Photoshop to take down the size of this image. Okay, so what we can do in Photoshop is, number one, we can evaluate, do we need this image to be that size? Although it's the size in Photoshop, the size of the canvas doesn't need to be that big. And if we go into the website, what we'll see is that it takes up the full height of the page. And you ask yourself a question, which is, what's the average browser height going to be for someone accessing this web page? So you want to give it some context. If you think about it, if you include the title area, well, if you include the navigation area up here, and you look up data behind the standard desktop resolution, something around 600 pixels in height, right? So the average person coming to this page is going to be accessing it with a browser that has a height of 600 pixels. So you think here, okay, well, is it really necessary to have it at 1080? Could we just bring it down to, say, 600? And the answer to that is yes. Obviously, this video isn't going to go through retina and non-retina suppose principles of how to do them and how to optimize them. This is specifically just for standard images and how to optimize them. Doing retina and non-retina images, how to optimize them and how to add them into pages, that's a whole other video. So keep that in mind. Anyhow, that's one thing. Think of the context. In this case, it's just the full width of the browser, so the full height. So average person is going to have a browser of 600 pixels in height, so what we'll do is we'll just go to 600 pixels. So that's a question to ask yourself. Does it really need to be the size that it is? Cool. So question, actually not really anything else to do within Photoshop, nothing basic. So we'll go straight for the export. Now instead of, actually, what I'll do, if you do another Command S and you save this one out, and we'll save this as a PNG, and then we'll just say 600px, add on to the end of that, and we'll see how much we've cut down. So if we get the info open for both of these, the original one was 1.7 megabytes, right? And already, just by making the height of this 600 pixels, we've cut it down to 623 kilobytes. So we've almost, it's almost a third of the original. So we've cut it down dramatically, 623 kilobytes down from 1.17 megabytes. So you can see just with a simple technique there, which isn't even an optimization technique rather than just a resizing technique, you get the size down dramatically. But there's a better way to export. Instead of just saving normally, what we can do is we can click the file up in the menu and click Save for Web. And so this is saving images specifically for the web. Now, a consideration that I'll do in another video, which is talking about trade-offs to make, is do you want it to be a JPEG or a PNG? Now in this case, because we're really fanatical about little details in design, the background here is a gradient background. It's more gray on the right hand side than it is on the left. The left hand side is white and then it transitions over to gray. Now there are a lot of different things you can do. You could make it a JPEG image and make the background a gradient, but then you get into a big discussion over, well, it's a responsive website, so how does that work? The gradient changes, all these kind of variables, and so you get to the bottom line, which is, okay, let's just make it a PNG. That makes more sense. So that is another consideration for a video I'll do after this. In this case, it's not going to be a JPEG because a JPEG isn't going to work if we put a JPEG with a fixed background on top of another gradient background on a responsive site. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in this case, we're going to want to make it a PNG. A simple thing here, so we have PNG, transparency, obviously we want transparency. If you're not going to be using transparency, then there's not really any point in making it a PNG and make it a JPEG. So we'll go transparency. A couple of bits you can do here. This will cut down the size just a tiny bit. Where it has metadata here, you can change that to none. And that will shave off usually a tiny bit. Metadata is just adding in sort of copyright information, anything like that. If you really need it, in most cases you won't. And that's it really. In terms of a PNG, compared to a JPEG, I'll actually go through with you in a JPEG now, but there's not too much to actually do within Photoshop for PNGs. For a JPEG, you have a lot more options. You can choose what compression quality you want. You can choose low, which takes it right down. What I'll do is I'll zoom in on this image 200% so we can really see the quality here. So that's at low, 10% quality. You can jump up to medium, 30%, high, 60%, and maximum at 100. Now, you can really get away with a lot here. If you have maximum at 100 and you get down to high, people that are viewing the site aren't really going to be able to tell the difference. So that's one tip. Most images, you can get away with putting it down to high rather than maximum, which brings the quality down to 60%. Okay? Now, you can see the difference again between a JPEG and a PNG. Right now, this JPEG is down to 71 kilobytes, whereas if we switch it over to a PNG, that's 600 kilobytes. But we're doing a PNG for this case, so let's stick to the PNG. They're just some options you can change with a JPEG image, just in terms of the quality and everything else here. So keep that in mind. You go File, Export to Web, and you get a lot more options, and the images that are exported from this place are a lot more optimized. So now that we have the PNG, transparency, no metadata, what we'll do is we'll go and save this image out. So we'll go blog, image optimization, and now what we'll do is we'll go optimized. So there we have an optimized PNG. Now the proof is in the pudding here. Will it actually be optimized? Great question. So, not by much at all actually. Original image, 1.7 megabytes. Unoptimized, here we have 623 kilobytes, and optimized only 618 kilobytes. So that only took off about 5 kilobytes, which isn't really even worth doing it for web. With JPEG, this would be a lot different, but for PNG, not so much. But they're the main things, really just the main functions that you can use in Photoshop to export images with more optimization. If we do a JPEG now, and we go to high, take that down from 60, make it optimized, and then we save this out, and then we'll name this JPEG. And you can see if we compare all 4 of these again, and we have the JPEG one gets down to 73 kilobytes compared to the lowest one here, which is 618 kilobytes for the PNG. So again, you really want to choose the context. Does it really need to be a PNG? Do I really need to have the background a gradient, or can I just make it a solid, which will mean I can make the image a JPEG, which will make the image size dramatically less than if it were a PNG. Not to worry about PNGs. PNGs aren't the bad guys. In the next video, when I get into some other apps that we can use to optimize images, I'll show you that we can get PNGs down quite dramatically from what Photoshop can export them to. Till the next video, guys. Bye.